The Slickers by L Ron Hubbard. Tex Laramee inserted his cigar below his scraggly mustaches and looked sideways at the stranger.
Yep, I'm on my way to New York. I'm here to tell you right now that if any of these greenhorns tries to pull anything on Tex Laramee, they'll have to talk it over with Judge Cole first.
He patted the bulge under his coat and, in doing so, displayed his bright sheriff's badge to momentary view. The stranger tilted his bowler hat and suppressed a smile with his hand. The stranger had a diamond on his finger which matched the glitter of his hard eyes. Tex, supposing that this partner in the smoking car had come there by chance, talked on.
Old John Temple knows where to go for help,
Said Tex, nodding his head vigorously and gnawing harder on the mangled cigar.
He wouldn't trust none of them city dicks. He sent right out to Arizona for his old friend Tex Laramee.
Who's John Temple?
Said the stranger.
What? You ain't never heard of John Temple? Why, snap my suspenders, but you Easterners are the most ignorant. Well, he's the biggest copper man in Arizona, that's what. He's got more millions than you got whiskers. He's so rich, he uses solid gold cuspidors, that's what. And you never heard of him.
Lied the stranger, fingering the diamond.
What'd he send for you for?
Why, to guard him, of course. Out in Arizona, a man don't need no garden. Why, you could leave $1 million sitting in the middle of the street and nobody'd think of packing it off. But New York, well, that's different. They'd slit your throat for a nickel in that town, I hear. John Temple, he ain't in such very good health. And they wanted me to come east and bring him back home. And here I am.
You're a sheriff out there or something, aren't you?
Sure. Say, how'd you know?
Oh, you just look like a sheriff, that's all. I could spot your kind most any place. Big black hat, gray mustaches, high-heeled boots. Sure, I know your kind when I see one.
Sheriff of Cactus County. Been sheriff for 30 years. They don't show no signs of kicking me out yet.
The stranger got up and elaborately stretched.
We're passing Newark. I think I'll go get my baggage together. See you later, Sheriff.
So long.
Said Tex, looking out of the window. The stranger went up the aisle, opened a door, and passed into the next car. He promptly collared a porter and thrust a $5 bill into his hand.
Here, take this telegram and send it when we stop in Newark. Understand?
Tex was uncomfortable sitting on the red plush. He squirmed and shifted his gun into an easier position. He looked at the maze of chimneys which went sailing past and shook his head.
Beats hell. Ain't even room to breathe out this way. No wonder John Temple wants to go home.
A few minutes later, after the stop at Newark, the train screeched to a stop at Pennsylvania Station. Tex picked up his paper suitcase and followed the other passengers down to the platform. Suspiciously, thrust away the red caps.
Beats hell. These here Easterners ain't even strong enough to carry their own suitcases.
Disgustedly, he stalked up the iron steps to the waiting room, intending to phone John Temple at the Manhattan Hotel. The crowd was thick and noisy. Tex Laramee, standing a head taller than most of the men, gouged his way through the press, eyes yearningly fixed on the red and gold sign far away which said, "Phones."
Beats hell. Regular damn stampede.
A sallow-faced man was coming the other way. His face was thinner than a knife blade, and his eyes were hot. He ran squarely into Tex. The press of the crowd held him there for a moment. Tex shoved him away, but the man was hurled back at him again.
Ah, doggone! You can't walk through me! What do you think I am, a shadow?
The sallow-faced one drifted out and away, and Tex lost sight of him. Presently the crowd thinned, and Tex made his way toward the phone signs. He leaned over the switchboard desk.
Please, ma'am, would you call up the Manhattan Hotel for me?
The girl glanced up, startled by the mustaches and the big black hat.
5 cents, please.
Confidently, Tex reached into his pocket. He scowled and tried another. He set down the suitcase and rapidly searched through his coat. A baffled expression came over his leathery face.
It's hell. I put that wallet right here in my hip pocket, and
5 cents, please.
Tex repeated the search, and then it began to dawn upon him that he had been robbed. Hastily, he felt for his gun. It was gone. He grabbed for his star and clutched nothing but vest cloth. The girl frowned and held her earphones on tight. A policeman came up and motioned with a stick.
Move along, buddy.
look here.
Said Tex, looking earnestly at the beefy red face before him.
I'm Sheriff Tex Laramee of Cactus County, Arizona. I just came here.
That's so. Move along, buddy, before I have to get tough with you.
Tough with me?
Said Tex, backing off to give himself arm room.
Look here, you shorthorn. When you bark at me...
Move along.
A thin finger tapped the sheriff's shoulder. Full of flight, Tex whirled and found himself facing the stranger he had met on the smoking car.
Having trouble?
Asked the man in the bowler hat.
And robbed. I was coming through that crowd, and some sticky-fingered coyote went through me like a bullet through butter. And then this blankety-blank beef steer...
What's that?
Said the officer, juggling his nightstick.
You heard it.
Nervously, the stranger tugged at the sheriff's arm.
You better come along with me, mister. It won't do you any good to buck the law.
Tex picked up the paper suitcase and, still growling, followed his newfound friend out of the station and into the din of 7th Avenue.
We better have a drink.
Said the stranger, tipping the bowler hat forward on his milk-white brow.
All right, but I've got to call the Manhattan Hotel.
Call from the bar.
Said the stranger. Overawed by the hurry and bustle and noise, feeling small in this dingy canyon of buildings, Tex tagged along. High-heeled boots scuffing the pavement, spur rowels whizzing. They entered a small barroom on 34th Street where the stranger seemed to be known.
Better go into the back room. More quiet back there.
Tex was still too worried about his money and papers to protest, and he stepped through the door. The place was dimly lighted and poorly furnished with scarred tables and unpainted chairs. A sleek-headed waiter took their order and slipped out with it.
What the hell's the matter with people in this town? They stare at you like you was something out of a museum.
He gave his big black hat a defiant tug and then straightened his mustache.
I don't think I like this place. All my life I wanted to see New York. Now I'm here. To hell with it.
Oh, you have to get used to it.
I don't think I'd live long enough. What with all them taxis scooting around? Them drivers act like they was breaking broncs. Where's the phone around here?
Tex started to get up. A chilly voice behind him said,
Don't move, Bronson. And that goes for you too, old-timer.
Tex turned carefully around. He knew that tone of voice. A man had slipped into the door and stood with his back to it, holding a .45 automatic, carelessly pointed in the general direction of the table. The fellow wore a checkered suit and a flaming red tie. His nose had been broken back against his face, and his mouth was an ink mark across his offside jaw. Bronson froze where he was, and his eyes grew very round.
I told you never to come back to this town, Bronson. I told you, and I thought you'd have better sense. Get up careful and walk to that other door. Understand?
Bronson got up. Tex showed no inclination of moving at all. Tex's eyes were roving up and down the checkered suit. Bronson whispered hoarsely,
Do what he says! He's a killer!
Tex turned disgustedly and followed Bronson into the indicated room. The place was without lights or furniture. They stumbled over some mops and pails, and the door slammed shut behind them. The key rasped in the lock. Tex upended a pail and sat down on it.
Damn it, I've got to call the Manhattan Hotel. Will that gent be gone long?
Not long enough.
What's he going to do?
Get his pals in a car.
What for?
Looks like we're going for a ride.
Will we be gone long?
You don't understand. We'll be gone a long, long time. They're going to take us out and bump us off.
You mean they're going to plug us? What the hell? I never did nothing to them. If they want to kill us, what'd that gent walk off for, huh? Why didn't he just plug us and get it over with?
He has to get his mob.
That's a hell of a way to go about it. I don't like this town more and more. And besides, John Temple be getting worried about me.
They sat there in the dark for a long time. Tex chewed up half a bar of tobacco, using a mop pail for a spittoon. Bronson burned a pile of cigarettes. Finally, Tex stood up.
I ain't going to wait.
No, you don't.
Tex drowned out the rest of the sentence. Tex raised his heel and banged it against the lock. He tried it again, kicking harder. With a crash, the door flew open. Tex stalked out into the second room and tried that door. It was also locked. Tex raised his boot and slammed it against the door. With a shower of splinters, it caved in. Tex strode out into the barroom. Several men were sitting around with surprised looks on their faces, but the gunman was not in sight. Tex walked out on the sidewalk and proceeded toward 6th Avenue, glaring at every man who stared at him. He found a cop on the corner and received directions about the Manhattan Hotel. It was up in the 50s. A long, long walk from 34th. In spite of his high heels, Tex walked it, and his indignation against his reception committee grew with every stride.
Had to get his gang. Had to get his gang. The yeller-bellied sidewinder, the pasty-faced son. Had to get his gang. And there he stood with his gun in his hand, and neither of us, hell.
At last, he found the Manhattan Hotel. He had never seen a hotel with phone service in the rooms before, so he walked straight past the switchboard. He asked the clerk.
Where can I find John Temple, sonny?
The smooth-faced clerk eyed Tex with distrust.
You have some business with...
Never mind my business. You slick ears ain't the nosiest pack of lobos I ever see. What room's he got? Quick now.
He got the room number immediately and bore down upon the elevators. He had ridden in elevators before, but he had never trusted them any. He stepped gingerly into a car, was whisked to the 20th floor, leaving his stomach in the region of the 10th. Getting out, he prowled the halls until he found the number he wanted. He began to beam. John Temple was near at hand, and all his troubles would be over. He knocked, and then knocked again without receiving any answer. He tried the door and found it open. At first glance, the room appeared empty, and then he saw a curiously stiff hand jutting out from the other side of the bed. Tex stalked across the rug and then came up with a jolt. John Temple was lying with outflung arms in a muddy pool of his own blood. A knife wound showed in his throat, another in his chest. His jaw was frozen open. His gray hair was matted. Tex stood there for at least 2 minutes without moving a muscle. He turned slowly around and saw that the room had been ransacked.
Something has got to be done.
He marched toward the door he had closed behind him, but before he could touch the knob, it swung in toward him. 2 men in plain clothes were standing in the hall. Behind them was an officer in uniform.
Okay, Haggerty.
Said one of the detectives.
Look around the room.
The other, Haggerty, stepped inside and spotted the corpse.
Dead man.
Okay.
Said his partner, walking up to Tex.
Don't get excited, Granddad.
With deft fingers, he frisked Tex for a rod and found only the empty holster.
Knife job. Shivved him twice.
Said Haggerty.
No knife.
Said the other.
Must have pitched it out.
Stand right there, Granddad. And maybe if you act nice, you'll get treated better. Haggerty, put the cuffs on him.
The officer snapped the bracelets on Tex's weathered wrists and gave him a hard look. He said,
Call the gang and get him down here, Smitty.
Detective Smith tossed the phone from cradle to his hand and asked for police headquarters.
Give me the squad. Hello, that you, Pat? Send up the dead wagon for a stiff at the Manhattan Hotel. Sure, it's murder, just like the tip said. Sure, we got the guy. Think we sleep all the time? Yeah, he's right here. Looks like revenge or something. I don't know. Funny old geezer in a big hat. How do I know the stiff's name? Come up and find out yourself.
Tex came to life.
Say, what the hell are you fellers trying to do, huh? This ain't right. Look here. You think I done that? You think I'd use a knife? Why, by the great horn spoon, old Temple was my best friend. What's the matter with you fellers? Say, listen, don't you know who I am? I'm Tex Laramee, sheriff of Cactus County, Arizona. That's who. Look here, I got to...
Shut your trap,
Said Smith.
You'll talk later.
Damn it. Look here, Temple sent me to come to New York and see him home. And
Yeah, we believe you.
Said Haggerty, searching the room.
now see here, I've got a telegram from him.
Oh, let's see it.
Said Smith. Tex, in spite of the bracelets, tried to get into his breast pocket. With a sinking feeling, he remembered that all his papers, even his suitcase, was gone.
Look here, you just wire Ed Murphy at Stud Horse, Arizona, and he'll tell you.
Will you shut up?
Something like a wolf howl came from the street, and presently the room was full of cops and fingerprint men and medical examiners. Worried though he was, Tex looked at this young army of police officers and grinned sourly to himself.
Hell, back in Arizona, there's just me. I never make a mistake like that. Damned if I...
Shut up!
A police lieutenant stopped before Tex and looked him over.
On down to headquarters, and he'll talk all right. He'll talk.
Come along.
Said Smith, jerking Tex's arm. The officers pried their way through the crowd in the lobby into the Black Maria. Tex felt red about the ears. People were pointing at him. The wagon careened through the traffic, first on one pair of wheels, then the other.
What's the idea of driving so fast? I ain't anxious to get any place.
The police driver cut 3 red lights in a row, played hopscotch with a streetcar, squeezed in between 2 trucks at 40 miles an hour, siren and whistle going continually. With squawking brakes, they lurched up against the curb before headquarters. Tex was hurried up the steps, through the doors, down a hall, into an elevator, out of it, into an office, into another office, and then into a room which had an enormous green-shaded lamp in the middle of it. They slammed him down into a chair, snapped off the cuffs, turned the light straight into his eyes, and began to yell at him. Tex was so confused he could not do more than blink. He could not hear any one of the men. All of them were going so hard. Suddenly, there was silence. A lieutenant of detectives stepped into the bright light and thrust her jaw into Tex's face.
So you won't talk, hey?
Damned right I'll talk. Good God, you're yapping like a lot of coyotes over a dead horse. Sure, I'll talk. But maybe some of you ought to listen, huh?
All right, Weisenheimer. Then answer this. Why'd you kill John Temple?
I tell you, I didn't kill him. He was a friend of mine.
Cut it. We want it straight. Why did you kill John Temple?
Look here.
Bawled Tex, mustaches sticking straight out in his fury.
I'm Tex Laramee, sheriff of Cactus County, Arizona. That's who. And you can wire Ed
Why did
Murphy.
you kill John Temple?
You can wire Ed Murphy, and he'll tell you who
Why
I
did you
am.
kill John
I
Temple?
came here to see old John and take him home.
Why did you kill John Temple?
Made a mint of money in the copper mining,
Why did you kill John Temple?
and he wanted me to look after him while he traveled.
Why did you kill John Temple?
Met a stranger on the train named Bronson, and he...
Why did you kill John Temple?
When I was coming up the steps, I guy picked my pockets.
Why did you kill John Temple?
Stuck us up and told us he was going to.
Why did you kill John Temple?
And when I walked into the room, there he was on the floor.
Why did you kill John Temple?
Must have had a lot of pesos on him, and...
Why did you kill John Temple?
And that's all I know about it.
So, you won't talk, hey? Slam him behind bars, Fallon, and leave him there. Okay, Weisenheimer, if you won't talk now, you'll talk later. We got a rubber hose around here for tough birds like you. Take him away.
They hustled Tex down another hall, into an elevator, down it, and into another hall. And suddenly, Tex found himself staring at the back of a locked cell. A sleepy-eyed man looked up from the bunk, grunted, turned over, and went to sleep again.
Beats hell. More and more, I don't like this here town.
Tex sat down and rested his chin on his palms. About 9 the next morning, the lieutenant sent for Tex Laramee, and soon Tex was ushered into that august presence.
Now look here, wise guy. We ain't got all day. You come clean and we'll get this out of the way.
She eyed Tex up and down.
From the west, ain't ya? Well, you ain't west now. Maybe out there you can go around stabbing guys, but this is New York, understand? And in New York, we've got law.
I'm the law out there,
Said Tex, sullenly, gnawing the ends of his mustache.
From what I've seen of this
Why
here,
did you kill John Temple?
Said the lieutenant, exactly like a parrot.
You ask me that again, and I ain't guaranteeing what I'll do about it.
Oh, tough guy, hey? You know who you killed? You killed John Temple, the Copper King. That's who. He's worth $10 million. And that makes it important. Get me?
What if he was only worth 2 bits?
Now come clean. Why did you kill John Temple?
Tex merely glared. An office clerk came in, listened for a moment, and then pointed at the lieutenant's desk. Annoyed, the lieutenant glanced down at a medical examiner's report and recommendation. She studied it for some little while, evidently having difficulty reading. She moved her lips, scratched the top of her head, and then stared up at Tex.
Who the hell are you anyway?
Tex let out a long sigh.
I'm Tex Laramee, sheriff of Cactus County, Arizona. I came here to New York to take John Temple home. He wired me, and I came...
Send for Lefkowitz!
Lefkowitz came after a long delay. He was short, round-faced, and businesslike. His attitude said that he didn't have all day to waste on a mere cop.
Now what? I've got work to do. Am I the medical examiner here, or an errand boy?
Now, Doc, does this report of yours read right?
No, I make him out for fun.
Well, look here. You say this John Temple had been dead almost 3 hours when we found him. That right? How'd you know how long he'd been dead?
Rigor mortis and body temperature told me that. Say, what the hell is this? I said he's been dead almost 3 hours, and that's all there is to it, understand?
I say he couldn't have been,
Yelled the lieutenant, surging out of her chair and banging her fist down on the report.
It ain't possible. This bird killed him. We walked in and there he was, going through the bureau. What you gotta say about that, Mr. Medical Examiner? Maybe if you had my job, you would understand.
The hell it isn't!
Roared Lefkowitz, also banging his fist down on the desk.
What's the matter with this guy? Happening in after the cadaver was knifed, eh? What about that?
The lieutenant paced up and down the rug. She picked up the report, threw it down, picked it up, and hit it with her fist.
Damn that clerk. He said this bird went up just before we did. He said he couldn't mistake him because of that mustache and black hat. And now you come along and shoot my case all to pieces. Damn it. I've got to get a conviction if I have to hang the mayor. John Temple was worth $10 million. That makes it important. See? What am I going to do if every mother's son in this office comes around and shoots my case full of holes? What do you think you are, anyway?
Lefkowitz turned on his heel and opened the door.
That's my report, and that's all there is to it. And if you call me again when you've got my report in front of you, I'll see you never get a conviction.
The door slammed, and the lieutenant looked hard at Tex.
I still think you did it.
Tex spat thoughtfully at the cuspidor and then looked at the two cops who held him as though measuring up their fighting capacities. The lieutenant looked back at the report, baffled. Tex said,
Well, what'll it be? You going to hang me or what?
Turn him loose,
said the lieutenant to the two cops.
And listen here, you. We're keeping an eye on... we're not through with this yet. Now get out!
Tex planted his big black hat on the back of his head, turned around, and walked out. Hands thrust into his empty pockets, he stared balefully at the noisy, hurrying street and the towering buildings. He sighed deeply and looked down at his feet. It was a long walk back to 34th Street. He was buffeted about by the crowd until he found out that the only way to walk in New York was dead ahead without caring who you knocked down. After that, he made fair progress. Accustomed as he was to looking 30 miles in any direction without seeing anything more startling than a Joshua tree, Tex had some difficulty finding the bar. He walked around and around the blocks adjacent to Pennsylvania Station, high heels hurting worse and worse. By the time he had run out of epithets for pavement and people, he noticed that he kept seeing one particular man always behind him. The fellow was round and beefy and red-faced, and he walked with a heavy list as though about to fall over. Once, Tex walked straight back to where the fellow stood, and then, for fear he was mistaken, allowed him to go on peering into the shop window. After all, thought Tex, you couldn't tell these damned greenhorns apart nohow. Again, he searched for the bar, and he found plenty of bars, but none of them looked just right. Once more, he noticed the fat one behind him. It dawned upon Tex then that headquarters was shadowing him, hoping that he'd lead them to some of his supposed pals. Tex thought that over. It takes a long time for an Arizonian to get mad. He usually has lots of time and lots of space to get mad in, and he usually ends up without getting mad at all. But this was different. People were bumping him, and L was grinding overhead. A block away, the 7th Avenue subway was yowling under his skittish feet, and 3,000 cabs were honking their horns. Tex walked straight back to the shadow and grabbed him by the coat. The man was so startled the cigarette jumped out of his mouth and showered sparks down his vest.
What the hell's the idea? Maybe you think I can't read trail sign, huh? Maybe you think I need a conducted tour around this here town. Well, I don't.
He gave the detective a thorough shake and then dropped him to the pavement.
If I see you once more, I'm gonna lick the whole damn police force. You better get going.
The shadow scuttled back. This was unprecedented. He could hardly call for aid, because to do that would be to admit that he had shadowed so poorly that he had been detected in the act. He made the best of it by half walking, half running out of sight. Tex whirled around and strode up the block again. This time he was successful. Without pausing in his stride, he stomped into the barroom and up to the bar. The bartender recognized him and went a little ashy. Tex's face was as grim as an Indian's.
Where's Bronson?
I don't know.
Where's Bronson?
Roared Tex, snatching hold of the man's white coat.
He ain't here.
Gasped the bartender, badly shaken. Tex, oblivious of the men in the room, strode toward the rear door, which he knew would lead to his late prison. He had seen other doors branching off that one. Entering the dingy room, he saw a door open on the far side. With 3 quick, cat-like steps, he went up to it, pressed it gently back as though air had blown it that way, and peered in. A man with a face as narrow as a knife blade was sitting on the edge of an iron cot. His hot eyes were thoughtful as he stared at the smoke which coiled up from his marijuana cigarette. His white shirt was crisp and the cuffs and collar were unbuttoned. It was the man who had collided with Tex in the station. Tex stepped in and stood there, hands in his pockets, looking pensively at his victim. The man started up. Tex gently pushed him back to a sitting posture. The man's eyes darted hopelessly toward his jacket, which hung from a nail.
Where is it, Sonny?
Where's what?
My old pal, Judge Colt. Come on, Sonny.
There was a certain quality in Tex's gaze which pinned the young man down as though he had an Apache arrow through him. Tex walked sideways toward a rough bureau. The pickpocket tried to rise excitedly. Tex calmly sat him down again. With quick fingers, Tex rifled the bureau. The first thing which came to light was his 6-gun. He balanced it fondly, spun it a couple times, and then cocked it with a horny thumb. He dished up his wallet and a pack of papers and pocketed them. In the corner, he spotted his paper suitcase, still closed up.
All right, Sonny. When's he come in?
Who?
Your boss.
In about... He never comes in here.
About an hour, you say. All right, Sonny. We'll just sit down and wait a spell. You ain't restless, are you? Bad for the heart to get restless, Sonny. You just sit there inside of the door, smoking that cigarette, and we'll wait for Bronson.
Tex sat down behind the door. The pickpocket tried to sit still, but he kept itching in various spots. An old alarm clock on the bureau ticked away minutes very slowly. Tex seemed quite complacent. He had reached the deadly calm stage when he could hit nickels at 100 yards with a .45. He had felt like this numerous times before, always just before a killing. 2 hours passed before Bronson showed up. He came in with a quick, nervous step, heading straight for the pickpocket's bedroom. Bronson stopped in the door and fanned himself with his bowler hat.
Gotta make tracks, Gino. They let the old fool loose and he'll be
Who they
here.
let loose?
Said Tex, standing up. Bronson's jaw sagged. His hand darted for his shoulder. A horrible click filled the room. The 6-gun under the horny thumb was at full cock. Bronson stared straight down the tunnel.
We'll go for a walk. Sonny, you get on your coat and come right along. And you can carry that suitcase while you're about it.
Tex herded them toward the barroom. He heard a door hinge creak behind him. Tex rolled sideways. An automatic spat flame out of the shadows. Tex sidestepped again. The hard-faced young man in the checkered suit had come in through the back entrance. He was leaning far to the right, trying to chop down on Tex's elusive shape. The 6-gun roared. The checked suit was rumpled. It caved forward very slowly, getting pink just over the heart. Tex heard the cloth and the gun hit the floor. He had already turned to see Bronson hauling at his own automatic. Tex fired for the man's wrist. The gun flew out of the holster and hit the ceiling. Bronson grabbed for his arm. Men were scurrying around out in the barroom. Tex did not know how much time he had left. With a quick push, Tex slammed Bronson back against the wall.
This is going to be a short and sweet execution. I ain't got no time for formalities. This is cold-blooded murder.
Oh.
The pickpocket Gino cowered in the corner.
You want to talk, Bronson?
Go to the devil.
Bronson shouted in his pain. The door bulged inward and suddenly men burst into the back room. Stepping hurriedly away from them, Tex had them covered before they saw him. It was the police lieutenant and the detectives, Smith and Haggerty.
Stand back, you jaspers! This is my roundup!
Drop that gun, you fool!
Yelled the lieutenant. Haggerty foolishly tried to get at his own Roscoe. Tex sent his hard hat sailing into the air with a snap shot. The lieutenant, Smith, and the police officer who had followed them in stood very still with open mouths. Haggerty was somewhat foolishly feeling for his bowler. Tex backed further away and turned to Bronson.
I said this was going to be cold-blooded murder. And that's what it'll be. Cops or no cops. Make your peace, Bronson.
With a slow down throw, Tex began to pull the trigger. The six-gun leaped back and up. A button flew from Bronson's coat. Everybody in the room let out a breath. Tex clucked his tongue and muttered.
Can't seem to hit nothing anymore.
Do something!
Wailed Bronson. Tex swept down again with his gun. Bronson was twisted half away from him. The roar of exploding powder blasted the room. Bronson's necktie fell in half at the knot.
Damn it, I'm getting old.
He raised the gun a third time and brought it slowly down. Bronson was paralyzed. His jaw was hanging open as if he had a billiard ball between his teeth. His eyes were glassy. Tex fired. A button flew from Bronson's sleeve.
I'll talk! Quit it! I'll talk! Listen, that guy murdered Temple!
He pointed at the faintly stirring mound of checked suiting.
How do you know?
Said Tex, casually sighting the gun again.
Don't shoot! I know because I told him to!
I don't believe you.
Said Tex, bringing the gun lower and lower and squeezing the trigger as he did so.
No, wait, listen! I'm telling the truth, so help me! I've been shadowing Temple. I've been after him for 6 months. I knew he was sick and I knew he'd send for you. So I shadowed you from Arizona to New York. I waited until you were almost there and then I ordered Johnny to knife him. I had Gino pick your pocket at the station. I had Johnny come back here and hold us up to make it look like I was still your friend. I called the cops when you went up to the hotel.
I don't believe it.
Said Tex, starting to sight the gun again. He was 20 feet or more from Bronson, but to Bronson, the gun was apparently 10 inches from his chest.
I had to kill him. He was buying up all my copper stock. He was trying to wreck me, and I had to kill him before he ruined me. Honest, that's it. And I picked up Gino and Johnny here in New York, and I paid them to...
Gino squeaked like a rat and tried to dive out. The lieutenant caught him and floored him with a blow to the jaw. Tex motioned toward the checkered suit and Bronson.
I suppose y'all have got enough sense to look after the rest of this. Me, I've got to catch a train to Arizona.
Not so fast. You're gonna stay here as a material witness. This ain't cleared up well enough for me yet.
See this?
Said Tex, shaking a yellow slip under the lieutenant's nose.
That's a telegram from John Temple, saying that he was afraid he would be killed and wanting me to come to New York. I'm Tex Laramee, sheriff of Cactus County, Arizona.
And, so saying, he carefully pinned his recovered star upon his chest.
Oh, why the hell didn't you show me this before?
I had to get it back,
said Tex, in a louder voice than ever. Then, quietly, Tex reached into Bronson's pocket and extracted a roll of money. He counted off $235, the amount which had been lifted from him, and then carefully put the rest back in Bronson's coat.
I've got to catch a train.
Wait a minute,
said the lieutenant, an admiring smile on her face.
You sure can shoot. We thought we were pretty good round here. Of course, I never would have let you get away with it unless I thought you had some exact purpose in mind.
Of course not. By the way, you better go read up on guns. All of ya.
Why so?
Croaked Haggerty, surveying his blasted hat.
'Cause,
said Tex, opening up Judge Colt and throwing out 6 brass cartridges, all empty.
because there's a limit to everything. This thing's been empty for the past 5 minutes.
So saying, he carefully adjusted his black hat, picked up his paper suitcase, and spat carefully within an inch of the lieutenant's shoe. He marched out of the door, through the barroom, heading in a beeline for Pennsylvania Station, jumping to the right and left to avoid the taxicabs.
More and more.
muttered Tex, wrestling his bag away from a thieving redcap.
More and more, I think I like Arizona.